Hello everyone. Well, today we're doing something slightly a little different. My mom asked me to do a commercial for a doll she has. This is a doll of Shirley Temple, a child star that she kind of a pre-war World War II child star, though, you know, her career went on for quite a while until she hit an adolescent. In a time when she started her career out at 3 years old. So, I mean, she started very young. And, you know, these days we hear so many tragic stories about child stars, how, you know, eventually they get into drug abuse and they, you know, sometimes they prostitute or they rob a convenience store. And I guess what's kind of nice about Shirley Temple is that she was, you know, she was somebody that had, you know, been a child star, had done very well, and then she kind of grew up and didn't have all those type of problems. She actually grew up to be a U.S. ambassador to both Ghana and Czechoslovakia. And in 1935, she won the Juvenile Academy Award. So, anyway, my mom, when she was a little girl, she used to watch the Shirley Temple Theater, which came on its Saturdays. It ran from 1958 to 1961. My mom, when it was first started, my mom was probably around 4 years old. So, if I'm looking down a lot, I'm looking at my notes. I hope you'll forgive me. This is not something I really know a lot about. So, I had to, you know, not something, you know, I can't talk about it quite as easily as I can about my Star Wars things and all that. So, I hope you guys don't mind. Later on, when I was a child, when the Shirley Temple movies seemed to come back on, and my mom used to watch them again, and I used to watch them with her, and I have to admit I didn't really appreciate them at the time. I kind of found, well, you know, for one thing, I was a child in the 80s, and, you know, I don't know if it's quite that common when you grow up in a particular time period and you're used to movies, particularly in the 80s when we were really getting into a lot of special effect, you know, the beginnings of things like special effects. I don't know if you can always appreciate earlier movies, you know, that come from a different time period and might have different values than, you know, what's in the time period you're growing up in. So, I have to admit I used to watch them. I guess I was bored, or maybe I just liked spending time with my mom. But, I really, in Shirley Temple, a lot of her stuff had singing and dancing, which made it even, it certainly wasn't Madonna or Cyndi Lauper, you know, so I found it very hard to watch. I think my main issue with Shirley Temple, though, was that I was always like, oh, come on, you know, people always talk about, oh, Shirley Temple, she was so feisty, and you know, she was so cute, and I didn't understand it when I was a kid, because I was like, you know, if a kid really did that and said the things she did or did the things she did in real life, they would have been smacked into next week. Not me, because my mom didn't believe in corporal punishment, but the thing is, I kind of viewed Shirley Temple views as like the hypocrisy of adults, you know. You know, they say, oh, well, this is cute on screen, but then you do it in real life, you get smacked. But, and then, of course, sometimes the Shirley Temple movies, I thought, took extreme artistic license. I mean, you know, usually there is artistic license in movies, you know, things happen that probably wouldn't happen in real life, but, I mean, with Shirley Temple, it was really, they did a lot of artistic license. So, but this was, my mom and I were talking about it the other day, and I was like, well, you know, what was the appeal for you? What was the appeal of the Shirley Temple movies? And she thought about it some, and she said, well, you know, what it was is that, you know, every week, Shirley Temple would start out, at the beginning of the movie, Shirley Temple would usually start out with everything. I mean, her life would seem so perfect. She would, you know, she would be well loved, and she was usually wealthy, or she was at least, you know, comfortable, and, you know, so, you know, she had apparently everything. And then there would be some sort of problem that happened, you know, some sort of tragedy that happened. She would lose one of her parents. The parents would lose their wealth. They usually lost their house, and then they were forced to move into a kind of a crappy house. And all their rich friends would turn against them. But you know, Shirley Temple would they would all keep the right attitude. You know, they didn't resort to drinking, or, you know, they didn't feel sorry for themselves. They were like, you know, this is a bad thing, but I'm going to have positive thinking, and my life will turn out better. And sure enough, you know, they lost all their other friends, but then they make truer friends. And then usually there's one nice rich person that notices either Shirley Temple or maybe one of her parents. They think they have a good idea. They help them out, and the parents get back on their feet again, and they get their money back, they get their house back, and they have much better friends, and they're much happier. And in a lot of ways you're saying, well, this bad thing that happened was a good thing that for them, even though it seemed bad at the time, it was a good thing that it was better for them because they found out who their real friends are. And, you know, a lot of times maybe the father didn't like how his life was before. Maybe he had a job he didn't like, and then later he finds a way to make lots of money with a job he does like. So, that was pretty much the appeal of Shirley Temple, and it pretty much preached, the values it preached were not too bad, you know, having a positive attitude during adversity, having the right values. Just because, you know, your life is going bad doesn't mean that you should, you know, start doing the wrong thing. You know, you should still hang on to your morals, and it preached being proactive, you know, that everybody, even a little girl, has the power to change their life. So that was the, and when I was able to appreciate it a little better, seeing it from my mom's point of view, though I have to admit, still, Shirley Temple movies are not one of my favorites, you know, but I can appreciate the sentiments. This doll comes from the film The Littlest Rebel, which was put out in 1935, which was the same year she won the Juvenile Academy Award for other pictures. And The Littlest Rebel, she starts out as the daughter of a Confederate soldier. And what happens is that this was probably appealing because, I mean, remember in 1935, this is, you know, when World War II, or maybe the events of leading up to World War II were starting to brew. And so I guess they were probably trying to prepare people, maybe, through the films. I found that in the old days, particularly, they used to use films to kind of help people kind of go through, you know, the events that were happening and all that. And, you know, like Gone with the Wind came out, I think, in 1939. So, you know, they were using the Civil War a lot to kind of, you know, I guess, prepare people for the adversity that was going to happen with World War II. Because even though we weren't, well, I mean, we were fighting it, but I mean, it never, I don't think ever came back to the States, except in, you know, and that maybe there was shortages, you know, and, you know, the men went over there, but, you know, it was still a rough time. So, I guess they started producing these type of movies to kind of help people. And the Civil War was a favorite topic. So in The Littlest Rebel, Her father, Shirley Temple, is the daughter of a Confederate soldier. And he goes off to war, and during that time period, the Yankees march in and they burn down her house. And, you know, she was wealthy. Suddenly their house is burned down. They don't have their money anymore. The mom and her move into the slave quarters, and their slaves remain loyal to them and take care of them. But the mom gets sick and dies, and the dad is called back from the war to, you know, be at her bedside when she's dying. And at that time, the Yankees start, well, I guess the Yankees keep coming back looking for him, and I guess at some point they, I don't remember this movie, my mom's telling me this plot line, but the Yankees come back, and Shirley Temple hits one of the, people with a slingshot, you know, and says she's not afraid of him. And rather than smacking her into next week, he thinks she's very cute. So the Yankee actually is sympathetic. And so when the father says, well, look, I just want to take my daughter to Virginia so she can live with her aunt, and then you can arrest me or whatever. So the Yankee, I don't know, somehow he winds up with the Yankees uniform. He's on the road. He's taking, you know, Shirley to her aunt's in Virginia when he gets arrested, and then somehow I guess the Yankees also find out that the Yankee soldier had helped them, so he gets arrested. So Shirley Temple and one of her, her servants, they decide they want to go to see Mr. Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, to get them both pardoned, and they can't afford the train fare, which seems extremely expensive for 1865. It was $9 for a little white girl and $6 for a black man. Seems a little expensive for that time period. Anyway, they don't have the money, so they tap dance in the street and sing Polly Wolly Doodle all day, and they make their money, and they go to Washington, and they see President Lincoln, and she sits on President Lincoln's lap and shares an apple with him and tells him her sad story, and, you know, pretty much, of course, everything ends happily ever after. A lot of people, you know, I guess, a lot of times people do have certain sensitivities, you know, about how, you know, since these films were made in a less enlightened time in our life, you know, in America, you know, some of their portrayals of blacks on film is now not really considered very flattering. I did like, though, this one story about the man that often danced with Shirley Temple. His real name was William Robinson, but his stage name was Bill Bojangles. And he was discovered, excuse me, I'm getting a glass of water. He was discovered, and he actually got a pretty good career for his tap dancing ability. So, you know, every time they needed a black guy to dance with a white person, you know, he was the one they called. Well, I like this one story that my mom found out about him. He was in a restaurant one time, and some people came into the restaurant and they said, we don't want him here. So the waiter came up to Mr. Robinson, and he said, those people over there don't want you in the restaurant. So Mr. Robinson asked him, he says, do you have a 10? And so the waiter gives him a 10. And Mr. Robinson, he takes out a wad of cash out of a lot of tens out of his pocket. And keep in mind, this is probably around the Depression, you know, a little bit after the Depression times, you know. Probably a lot of people didn't have a wad of money in their pocket. And he takes the waiter's 10 and he mixes it up. And then he goes to the waiter and he holds out the money and he says, if you can tell me which 10 is the colored one, I'll leave. Well, he never had any problems with that at that restaurant again. I thought that was a funny story. I thought that was a very creative, you know, way of getting around the problem, you know. So the doll itself, you're a little cut off here. I'll tell you, this is the doll. There's a little bit of a reflection from the light. And this is the dress she's wearing. She's a porcelain doll. She's 13.5 inches. She's a little taller when you don't have her shoes, or when you have her on the stand. We have her shoes off at the moment. Her arms bent. These dolls apparently they took the pictures, I guess, while she was singing a lot of times. And underneath her, she's got a tulle slip and some bridge, pantaloons and some stockings. She's part of the Dolls of the Silverscreen collection. It was produced by Danbury Mint. Oh, let me turn her around. And, see her hair is done up. It's actually bobby pinned into place. The Danbury Mint produced these dolls in 1986. And even then we found they included the bill and the time, we got them. My mom won them at an auction with Goodwill. And at the time it was $103 to buy the dolls, which I imagine was the pretty expensive even for that. Okay, so she comes. I'll take it off the doll for the minute. This is her box, and it identifies Shirley Temple, Littlest Rebel, Dolls of the Silverscreen. That's the date that the 1935 is the movie time. 20th Century Fox. The woman that bought her might have gotten her in 1991, I'm not sure. She comes with her certificate of authenticity, though it's made out to the original owner in this case. And it gives the serial number. And, yeah, the box isn't that fancy. And it doesn't seem to have anything else. Okay, so that's the box. Oops, eek. Okay, she comes with a stand, too, so you can display her. The dress, it has snaps for the dress. There you can see the writing that marks it as the Shirley Temple 1986. Further down, the dress has, let me see if I can find it. It's got a tag. I'm not finding it. Okay. Anyway, she has a tag on the dress. Let me redo her. That says she's from, that it's from 20th Century Fox in addition, in addition to it being, on the box and some things. Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. Yeah, 20th Century, you can see it's 20th Century Fox. Yeah. Okay, so, let's see. Alright, the dress, this doll actually, I can understand, she was very expensive, but there was a lot of care taken into this doll. The dress is kind of like a taffeta. It's like taffeta, I don't know what it is. The lace, I don't know if you can see it. It was probably not handmade, but it was at least made. It's crocheted, kind of, and so is the little appliques. They're embroidered, I think. They might have been embroidered by a machine, but the point is they were made. Her shoes, I'm not sure if they're not leather or if they're not, they look a lot like leather. They're very nice. Some of the nicest, you know, shoes I've ever seen. There is a problem with them, and this is a warning if you have any of these dolls, or any dolls, baby, period. The glue starts kind of coming off after a while. Take into mind, she was made in 1986. She's almost 30 years old. And the glue kind of started coming out and getting and sticking to her pose and all that. So my mom's not going to store her with her shoes because of this problem. But the shoes are really nice. I mean, possibly very leather. Let me see if I can compare them. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can tell, but, you know, this is how doll shoes normally are. They kind of are plasticky and, you know, and not quite as good. I hope I'm not making my other dolls feel bad. I love you guys. You know, but, you know, they don't have as nice of shoes. Does she look like Shirley Temple? Well, I didn't really think so. Actually, I kind of had a problem with her because she has a face of somebody I didn't like. But actually, she is a very nice doll. She's, you know, I think she's got a good personality too. But, as I said before, the position they have her in, Shirley Temple was probably around 7 years old when she did this movie. But they apparently, by the way her body is, I would say they took it from clips of her singing. And my mom claims that when Shirley Temple was singing, she had a tendency to sometimes squint her eyes a lot. But I find that sometimes when you're looking at her from the side or from the top or something, I do see the resemblance. And frankly, I don't know how easy it would have been to make a doll really in the likeness of Shirley Temple anyway. You know, she's got a really nice personality, I think. I think she was glad to be taken out of her box after all this time. And, you know, she was sitting there with my Eldo sculpture and had that look like, so, what's been happening in the world for the last 30 years since I've been in a box all this time? And he was like, well, they let the cat out, then they play some video games, and then they do some Spanish on the computer, and then they change the cat's food again, and then they change his litter, and she had that look like, oh, wow, this is so exciting, I'm so glad to be out of my box, isn't life great? And, you know, entailing all you know, all that positive enthusiasm that Shirley Temple is known for. It seems to be in her dolls. So I think, you know, if you're like my mom and you have the fond memories, and I have to admit, I think I can appreciate. I remember I was in the library the other day and thinking, God, I wish there was more, you know, upbeat type of movies that weren't stupid, and, you know, some feel-good stuff. You know, I do miss, I have to admit, we don't get a lot of feel-good movies anymore. You know, it's, you know, a lot of slasher type of things, and or, you know, action thrillers, you know. But that was one thing nice about the movies in those periods. If, you know, sometimes they were a little goppy, you know, sappy, and, you know, but they, you know, they kind of made you feel good about life even when life was going to hell. So, you know, if you have fond memories of this, you know, of that time period, and as I said, she is a beautiful doll. Very well made. I have to admit, I mean, there's not many dolls I have seen that are made like this. So, well, so if you know, I'm sure she would make any Shirley Temple fan, or maybe even any doll collector, would really like to have her. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy my review. Thank you.